Welcome back to the new adventures of the monad. We ended the last presentation by starting to look at how the sixth root race would begin to emerge approximately 600 years in the future. This is based on speculation by Charles Leadbetter. The ability to predict the future is correlated to one's ability to take into account all the myriad interactions that can occur and then project forward the most likely outcome. I am not sure Leadbetter would have had that capacity. It also begs a question on which plane was the Akashic record being interrogated. If it was on the emotional plane 48, abandon hope, as this world will only show you what you want to see. If it is the causal plane, then the truth from a matter perspective is known to the viewer. That does still not make it any easier to predict the future. For argument's sake, let us assume that Leadbetter had a reasonable shot at seeing a few centuries into the future. What did he see? He saw an isolated community slowly developing itself under the guidance of the Manu. To aid this process, there were 4 temples in the community. Each temple majored on a single theme. These were affection, devotion, sympathy, and intellect. In the last presentation, we looked at the crimson temple of affection that works through color. The next temple is dedicated to the color blue and is linked to devotion. It works principally through sound, using the same principle of instructions as those found in the crimson temple, except it is music rather than color that is the predominant element. Each person brings their own specially magnetized instrument, somewhat like a circular harp with strings of shining metal, upon which they play and through which they receive spiritual influence. The whole atmosphere is supercharged by the Gandharvas, or musical devas, so that every sound is multiplied, and for every tone a great chord of overtones and undertones, all of unearthly sweetness and beauty, are created. The whole temple service principally affects the emotional 48 and unity 46 bodies of the people. This is a repeat of the affection temple. In the yellow or intellectual temple, a service of identical structure is performed, built upon the creation of mental forms or images. The effects being produced focus mainly on the mental 47-4 and causal 47-1 bodies of the worshippers, who give themselves in surrender to the white heat of intellectuality raised to its highest power. By intensity of intellectual activity, the worshippers attain first a mental understanding and then by intense pressure a breakthrough into the world of intuition. Some leave the body, others pass into a kind of samadhi, which is a state of intense concentration. In all the temples, great emphasis is laid on the training of the will, the effect being predominantly shown by the intense glow of the causal bodies. The training reacts also upon the mental bodies and even the physical brain, which appears to be distinctly larger than the humanity of the 5th race. The sympathy or green temple may be considered as following the form of karma yoga. What is that, I hear you ask? It is the discipline of selfless action as a way to perfection. By contrast, the blue and the crimson temples practices focus on bhakti yoga, which is the path of devotion. It is the method of attaining illumination through love and loving recollection of the deity. The yellow temple focuses on jhana yoga, which is about gaining knowledge and awareness of the self. In the last, the green temple, the service is concerned with practical activity and the worshippers working with the plans for helping the world in numerous ways. It is under the guidance of the line of healing devas. Each person, as said, works through the particular temple that appeals to them most. There are no differences in advancement between those who follow one line and those who follow another. The habitual attendants of one temple, moreover, occasionally visit the others. A few people do not attend any of the temples, but are not on that account considered irreligious or in any way inferior to the most regular attendants. It is simply a matter of temperament, and there is complete freedom and tolerance. Leadbetter tells us that the Chohan Kuthumi, who, as said, is in charge of the whole of the religious and educational life of the community, visits all the temples in turn and takes the place of the officiating diva. If this does indeed occur in the future, it is telling us that a 43 self is prepared to operate in the dense atmosphere of plane 49 for an extended period of time. This was done in the distant past, but you may remember that the last incarnation of the Bodhisattva was by an overshadowing, not a direct incarnation. That incarnation did not go well for the supplier of the physical vehicle. When Kuthumi offered his body to the Lord Buddha, he got whisked off to paradise as well at the end of the assignment. In the developing community, education is considered of paramount importance. All sorts of additional tools are employed, such as color, light, perfume, I guess that's aromatherapy, sound, form. By this is probably meant sculpture and geometric shapes, and finally, electricity. The devas who play a major role in this work use armies of nature spirits to support their endeavors. All teachers must be clairvoyant, and there is no gender bias of who can teach what. Devas frequently materialize to give certain lessons, but do not themselves take sole charge of a school. The majority of monads birthing into this community are going to be immediate reincarnations, most of them having some memory of their past lives. So even tiny children are fully aware of the purpose of the community and endeavor to get control of their new vehicles as quickly as possible. This all seems too fantastical to believe. Are we really going to have divas waltzing in and holding seminars? Having said that, if a large proportion of this isolated community is I3 and above, then I suppose it could well happen. Great attention is given to the training of the imagination, and visualization is practiced thoroughly. We saw how this process was critical in the building of the Antakarana. The language used in this community is English, though extensively modified. Considering a lot of the younger generation's lexicon is a mystery to me, it is difficult to imagine that in several centuries hence the language is going to be remotely recognizable. When you consider the history of all our past incarnations is stored in our subconscious memories, the education of children in this community is going to be about finding the trigger that will leave the conscious mind to the memory being sought. Leadbetter goes on in his book to describe in some detail what life is like in this gated community. But this is not the norm for the rest of the world. They are still living in what we may call a fifth root race existence. The narrative given so far is an account merely of the beginning of the sixth root race. This community bears a similar relationship to the genesis of the current root race. A few thousand individuals gathered on the shores of Ruta before starting off for Central Asia 80-odd thousand years ago. It is not known how long it will be before America will be rent to pieces by earthquakes and volcanic outbursts. A new continent will be thrown up in the Pacific to be the home of the sixth root race. Gradually, the new continent will be heaved above the waves, and the land that was once Lemuria will arise from its age-long sleep and once more lie beneath the rays of the sun. This being the case, the continent of the sixth root race will occupy roughly the same geography as part of Lemuria. The sixth root race will, of course, have its 7 subraces, and from the 7th subrace will be chosen the germs from which will be created the 7th root race. This will be the work of the Manu of the 7th root race, and he will also arrange for the usual 7 subraces in his root race. But of that work, nothing is as yet known. The 7th root race will be especially concerned with the unfoldment of pure existence, an aspect of the divine life known also as the Father, the Creator and the Destroyer, to the Hindus as Mata Deva. When the seventh root race has run its course, the Earth will be vacated except for the usual nucleus which is left behind, and the main life stream will pass to globe E. According to Leadbetter, life on this globe will be somewhat less material, basically etheric, than it is on Earth, and the average level of consciousness should be extended since ordinary humanity will then possess what is known as etheric sight. By my estimation, if they did not possess this sight, they would be stuffed, as I hypothesize that this planet would be etheric in constitution. From globe E, the life stream will pass in the usual course to globe F and G. After that, the fifth round will commence, to be followed in due course by the sixth and the seventh rounds, after which our chain will vanish, to be succeeded by another chain, the fifth of the series. Something to look forward to. In the 68th and last in this series on chains, rounds and globes, we will conclude with a summary of our findings. Thank you.